All right, so here's a short presentation for today, and I think that I wanted to start with this. I think there's never been a better time to be in advertising, and there's never been a worse. Like, I think about it every day, and there are times when I get these ridiculous job offers, and I wonder if I should completely move industries, because there's honestly sometimes I wake up thinking, oh my God, I can establish so much in today's day and age, and some days I'm just like tearing my hair out in frustration because I think I've figured something out, and then Instagram goes ahead and changes its full algorithm. Like it happened in Jan this year when, the video just stopped performing. And I'm just sitting there saying, I just made that damn video and it's not working. Oh, why? Our friends at Instagram have just, changed their algo. And that's really how fast this industry moves. So I'm just going to start on that note of Discord, because welcome to marketing, 101 in today's day and age. So I'm just going to keep it very simple. I'll be honest with you guys. After this presentation, if you retain 3 out of the 4 codes that I'm going to be talking to you about, I'll be super impressed. There is scientific research to prove that after any amazing presentation, if you take away 3 codes, the speaker is kick-ass. I know I'm fairly good, so I'm hoping that you'll retain 3 of these. So today what I'm going to talk to you about, I'm a storyteller, okay? I don't fancy calling myself a data-driven marketer. I'm never going to be that. I'm an insight-driven marketer. So when I look at data, and I'm going to be talking to you about data a fair bit. There's no running away from data. I do not love data, like I said, but I have grown to like it. I think if you look at data with a different lens, don't ever look at data as an end. It's a means to an end. So that's why what I believe is that I'm an insight-driven marketer. So what I do is I look at reams of data and I say, what is it telling me about my consumer? And is there an insight there that I can do to reach my end? What is my end? My end is always and always one. My end is to tell a story that gives you goosebumps. My end is to tell you a story that sits very comfortably. That's a really great story, which has its pulse on culture. So there's a lot of words in there. I may not be able to unpack everything in an hour today. It's not possible to unpack everything that any of us have done in 18 years or however many years that you guys have worked. And some of us work 16 hours a day. So in every 16 hour, I learn something different. So I'll try and give you as much as I can. Why have I picked 2021? Because believe it or not, if you have worked every day of 2020 and 2021, if you've kept up with what's happened in India and Southeast Asia particularly, you will know that integrated marketing, the way we used to do it in 2019 and 2020 and 2021, has undergone a sea change. So I want to talk to you today about 4 key codes of how that has changed. And some of my own hypotheses that I dare say are turning out to be right. Some of it are data backed, some of it is gut, some of it is just intuition based on what I've seen. Okay, so what are those 4 key codes? I want to talk to you about consumer purchase pathways. Some call it buyer decision process. I call it consumer purchase pathways. I see them becoming more and more complicated, perhaps just leaving you with some thoughts on how we can simplify it. I want to talk to you about this resurgence of this beautiful thing called Phygital, which we had forgotten in between, which thankfully some brands are bringing it back. And I want to talk to you, like I said, how can Nike not be there in one of my slides? So it is there. Surprise, surprise. I was just joking with you earlier. Number 3, I want to talk to you about channel choices, and I'll give you a couple of personal examples of how at least we have used some of those successfully in 2021 and will continue to do. And maybe some qualitative tenets of how you can tell one story across multiple platforms and make it good. All right. Okay, so the year 2021, guys, is when the dust, I hope, will settle, right? So unless this pandemic, I wrote this slide and I said, okay, what if this pandemic, there's a 3rd wave that is expected. Sydney's just gone into its 5th lockdown of the year. Singapore's gone into its 3rd lockdown of the year. And I'm just thinking, will this slide hold? So I decided to be a little more optimistic and less pessimistic. And I said, okay, let's just assume that this is it. And the audience behavior change, which I will talk about in the subsequent slides, the dust on the audience behavior slides the audience behavior will settle this year. So what is that dust? We'll talk about. So I'll just leave you with one fact. The Think with Google report that I was reading just a couple of days back, 40 million plus people just in Southeast Asia alone would have gone onto the internet actively. Not saying that they have gone onto the internet for the first time, but actively, which means that maybe more than 2 or 3 times in a week, which basically means active behavior. More than 2 or 3 times in a week, they would have gone to the internet to do something, to do an activity, like, for example, surf the internet, watch video, do a transaction, etc. Now, that 40 million people in Southeast Asia going onto the internet is considered a tectonic shift. Now, that shift is still happening. That shift first happened in 2020, and then it's still happening in 2021. Why did that happen? Because all of us suddenly, come 12th March, in India at least, or in Bombay at least, we just all got shut down. And this laptop, along with the ether that brings the internet, is all we had as an access to each other and to the services that we need to survive. And that brought with it huge shifts in audience behavior. It's not my conjecture. I checked back that conjecture with organizations like WARC, Marketing Academy. All experts are saying that they can expect for the dust to settle. They can expect that whatever audience behavior we are now beginning to see, we will see them crystallize in 2021. Maybe there'll be some smaller incremental changes, but as we see audience behavior now, we will see that they will continue to stay for the next, let's say, 5 or 6 years, right? Okay, let's talk about purchase pathways. I'm assuming a lot of you are already familiar with the term purchase pathways. Purchase pathways are nothing but the 5 or 6, steps that consumers take to sort of get to the process of buying what they want to buy, right? So I'm just going to quickly run you through that process. So there are many in every industry, so don't get hassled by all of that, right? So there is awareness, there is consideration, there is pre-purchase, there is purchase, then there is post-purchase, then some industries will go on to say advocacy, all of that. So I read a report the other day, the beauty industry now has a 7-step buyer decision process. You can just Google it and you'll get multiple different. Because I do a lot of, I speak to a lot of students, so I find it easier to just standardize it. So bear with me. If I call them purchase pathways, or you can call them buyer decision process, right? What has happened in 2020 and 2021 especially is those purchase pathways have become very circuitous. What does that mean? Which means that pre-2020, 2019, or even 2018, they were no longer linear. And I have a map in the next slide. They were no longer linear. They stopped being linear, let's say 5-7 years back in any ways. Now what has happened is they have become very circuitous, meaning that there are several laps around the sun. There are several movements till they get to the point. They are cross platforms and they might occur multiple times for the same product or experience. And let's add some more complications to the marketer's life. In 2020, they become hyper digital. How do we know this? I just shared a fact with you. 40 million people joining the internet, meaning that pre-2020, if those 40 million people, they were asking their friends for recommendations, or they were reading the billboards, or they were, listening to a TV ad, watching a TV ad, listening to a radio ad, or going to a nearest cafe and looking at the booklet. Now, God help us, they are also going onto digital forums to make their decision. So what does this mean for us? So let me take you back a little bit. I am sure a lot of you are aware of this company called Procter & Gamble, which pretty much runs a lot of our lives. If you have used a lot of their products, as we have, they're quite really the masters of marketing. I hold them in really high regard when it comes to marketing, even now. Procter & Gamble manufacturers of some of the biggest FMCG products, and also some of the one of the best marketers in the world even now, right? In 2005, they coined something called the 3-step consumer marketing model. So for those who are familiar with me, just bear with me for a while. It's important to achieve that, establish that differentiation. That Three-step consumer marketing model, by the way, used to get taught in business schools. FYI, I've never had the privilege of going to a business school, so I have learned this on the job, and I used to find it fascinating. And in Unilever, you get taught all of this in the first year, so you just imbibe it, and then you do the job that I'm currently doing, and you're like, hang on a second, this doesn't make any sense at all. So I want to take you on that journey, right? So the consumer receives the stimulus through some sort of advertisement, or the consumer realizes that they need something. Simple enough, right? A trigger is then activated within the consumer. Acha, now I need something. Okay, I need to buy a face cream or whatever. Now, in 2005, the consumer would go to the store to buy a face cream, and then be struck with like a the first moment of truth would happen at the shelf when they would be faced with multiple different options. And if you were in a big city like Bombay at that point of time, you would go to like your D-marts, or like if there was a supermarket next to you, you'd be like, oh wow, so many face creams, now which one do I buy, right? And that's when your advertisements would kick in, saying, okay, who had the better out of home, who had the better TV ad. And if you remember, at that point of time, Procter and Gamble and Unilever were in the war of their lives. I can safely tell you, I have participated in some of those wars, and I've made some of those wars happen, right? So POP, point of purchase, was a really important warfare for brands. And I used to be brand manager on Liril and Breeze. I don't know how many of you are familiar with those brands. And as a brand manager, that point of purchase, that first moment of truth, the shelf, was very important for me. So I used to fight for space with Godrej No.1, fight for space with Synthol, and like, no, you have to give Liril the first option, all of that. So that's why I say it's where different brands fight for consumer attention. Simple enough. The consumer goes home, uses it, falls in love, hates it, whatever. Second moment of truth is that when the consumer uses it and all of that. So finish, right? Who are you going to tell? In 2005, were there any blogs? Were there any reviewers? No, you'll just go tell neighborhood auntie saying, shit, that little soap was so full of shit. Like, the fragrance was not even half as good as they made it sound in the la 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 ad. It's like really bad, okay? At best, some Femina magazine will write a review. End of story. Now, let me wake you up and bring you to today's world. What is happening? Good luck to any of us. We will go on social media and kill the product. Right? Okay. So not that bad, right? Okay. Let me now bring you to, this is not even today's, 10 years later, this is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the exact origin of ZMOT, or Zero Moment of Truth, by Google, is a little unknown. So I'm just going to put it to 10 years later, which is, let's just say it's 2015. Yeah. I want to show you what it was like 10 years back. Okay. 2015, 10 years later from 2005. So there's a stimulus, or let's say you have suddenly decided you need a face cream. There are multiple moments of truth. There will be digital ads for you. There will be search for you. God help you if you have gone on to Google search. There are 55,000 pages telling you about the benefits of Mama Earth, Daughter Earth, organic, inorganic, collagen. And by the time you have come out, you have probably realized that face cream kya, aapko to shayad, maybe you need something else altogether, right? Then there are blogs. Then there are influencers who are telling you that, no, you don't need a face cream. First, you need a face serum. Then on top of that, you need a face cream. No, wait, between a serum and a face cream, you need a moisturizer. And you're like, wait, but aren't they all the same? So ladies, you know what I'm talking about. Then there are WhatsApp forwards that your friends are sending. Then there are apps to judge what your skin quality is about. So your moments of discovery, research, seeking recommendations long before a purchase decision is even made are multiple, you guys. So therefore, the moments of truth have become multiple. So how your marketing or advertising is optimizing for that behavior is a very tough and very important question for you to answer. So it's a very scientific question, which is why when someone says, oh my God, you must be having so much fun doing this. I'm like, yeah, really. I have 55,000 moments of truth to solve for. If that sounds like fun to you, I welcome you to do my job. So therefore, once you have figured, so what am I trying to get at? You have to be in bed with your consumer so that you are able to map out maybe not even one, but multiple buyer decision journeys, if you're welcome to call it that, or consumer purchase pathways that your consumer has, right? And then how will you create a creative intervention speaking to each specific moment of this journey. Maybe you don't have the resources to speak to each specific moment of the journey. Maybe you take a call to say, listen, the decisions are being made at each of these. The key points of decision are not all of this, but this, and this. So I'm going to make my biggest interventions in this. So guys, today I don't have the time to go into greater details, but there's a lot of signs into buyer personas. Please read up. For a decision process, each consumer, each brand can have multiple buyer personas. So you will have to plot multiple buyer personas. And if you're lucky, if your brand is very simple, then it has one buyer persona. Now, buyer personas will have multiple buyer decision processes, right? So I don't have the time to go into that, which is why I had to do like a total of 7-hour boot camp with the last session. So, but remember that the buyer decision process, or whatever we call it here, is no longer simple. Do spend time with your consumer trying to understand where is it that your creative intervention is most needed. Okay. Hence, the questions for you to answer is, have the 5 stages, which is awareness, consideration, decision, purchase, advocacy, have they all shifted to digital? In the case of some brands, they all have shifted to digital, right? And digital footprint is easier to follow, so that shouldn't be too difficult. Is there now a significant shift to digital as compared to 2019 and before? So parts of your buyer decision journey may have shifted, parts of it may still be offline. How do the physical plus digital space converge for your customers in 2021? Now, here's a pro tip for you. Data can be your bestie. The more data you have and mine on your consumers' behavior in 2020 and in 2021, the more you will learn about the shifts. Also, the dust is yet to settle, which is why I said I was also a little cagey to say that the dust has settled, right? Your CPP or buyer decision process can further evolve in 2021. So guys, I am not here to give you the answers because I don't run your brands. I want you, if you want to take a screenshot of this particular slide and go back and ask these questions at your jobs, okay? Now, while I'm on this slide, I want to share with you a free tool. It's called Ask the Public, right? So now I'm sure all of you have advanced tools using which you, sort of understand your consumer. One of the things that I do for some of the projects that not necessarily at my job, but elsewhere for my friends, etc., is that I just Googled. Someone the other day for one of my personal projects asked me, so do you think people are still watching videos? And I'm just like, dude, like seriously. So is this tool called Ask the Public? Your first query or first question is for free. So I asked for online video. So look at all the associations for online video. So it gives you like a spider web map. So online video, what are people using online video to? So it's like a word cloud map and the association. So this slide tells me online video to, online video with associations is, without, near, and can. If you go to the next slide, it tells me why, when, where, how. I'm just going to stay on this slide so you guys can read it. So the tool is called Ask the Public. Your first question is for free. You can use it. I'm not sure what the cost after this is, but here's also a cheap and cheerful way to find out a little more about, let's say, terms your consumers are using, or just to know a little more about what your consumers are onto in the current times. All right. So moving on. All right. Here's one of my favorite subjects, guys. So while we're talking a lot about going digital, I know that a lot of you might be wondering, saying, but my product isn't necessarily geared up to go fully, digital, right? Which is absolutely fine. So what is Phygital? Phygital is not necessarily anything new, but I think it is very important to recognize how important it is to adopt Phygital. Phygital is physical plus digital. So let me explain. Phygital marketing is the creation of a blended customer experience, right? So where your physical and the digital can coexist within the same journey. So IKEA's finally bringing it to India, hopefully. They have had it elsewhere forever. So I was based in Singapore for the longest time, and they used to have this service in Singapore, right? So where you could, you wanted to buy that beautiful red sofa that they had, you could just scan that sofa, and using augmented reality you could just like sort of place it in your living room and you could see how it would look. So they would shorten that. So if this was interactive, I would pause here and ask you, what stage of the buyer journey were they making it very simple for you? So they were making the consideration stage of the buyer journey very simple for you, because it is at this stage that you would fall out, right? So let's say you were considering two brands, let's say IKEA and Castlery. Sorry, Castlery is not an Indian brand. So let's say you're considering IKEA and Pepperfry. So if let's say IKEA gave you that option and Pepperfry didn't, and in the consideration stage, IKEA gave you the option of trying out their red sofa using augmented reality in the living room, right? And you could decide using that, but you really like Pepperfry's red sofa, but you didn't know how it would look. You didn't know what the dimensions would be like. You'd be like, I don't need to go to the store. I can just buy IKEA's now. That's the beauty of blending the customer experience where the physical and the digital can really coexist. So the example that I have given you is actually not of IKEA's because obviously they didn't have this app experience. It's a Malaysian company that's actually really big in Singapore. They are called Castlery. But just giving you an example of how augmented reality can be really used by brands big and small to bring experiences, especially in the times of pandemic, to really bring alive the experiences that you can't. Let's say you can't get people to your stores. Can you bring the store's experience into their homes? So I'll give you an example of a company. There are lots of companies actually that come and talk to us on a regular basis. So if any of you are interested in augmented reality in India, Alive AR is a company, and this is not an endorsement, so I've not worked with any of them. Just they have come and spoken to us. So I can give you a couple of names. Alive AR does decent augmented reality from what I can see. I see a lot of leading brands working with them. Avatar is another company, AVATAR. So interestingly, what they do is, let's say you can't go to a store to try on a shoe, right? But you know the fit and all is great for you. You just want to know how it looks, right? So using the AR functionality, you can just see how it looks, and it's really cool. You can take a picture, and you're done, and you can actually make that investment in the comfort of your home during a lockdown. So what happened in 2021 is that the need for marketers to create that blended experience that I spoke about as part of the integrated marketing plan, it got really heightened. So my question to you is, again, please ask yourself that consumer purchase pathway, awareness, consideration, pre-purchase, purchase, and post-purchase advocacy, that 5-step process, which part of it do you think will benefit from a phygital? Phygital meaning physical plus digital experience. And can you build that experience at scale? Now, here's the $1 million question. I love it when people say, हाँ, एक event के लिए phygital कर देंगे. And I'm just like, okay, but what will that achieve? So the next example is that of an event, but that's being done by a brand to prove a point, to make a brand moment, because they're a really big brand. Now, this is a really small brand that did it during the pandemic. Is this brand called Castlery, like I mentioned. They did it during the pandemic because you know why? Consumers couldn't make it to the store. But what was the product need they were solving? People needed furniture for their work from home setup, but they couldn't come to the store. But they needed to see what the furniture looked like. So they quickly developed this AR app and said, app use karo. Use the app to see if the furniture fits into your home. We will deliver. Now that's called solving consideration and pre-purchase in one shot using technology. So ask yourself if you can solve for multiple parts of the consumer purchase pathway at scale using this beautiful thing called tech. Hence the pro tip, tech can aid in the creation of physical experiences. Now my best example, how can we have a presentation without Nike? Okay, so this is in Manila. If I remember correctly, this is 2018, and I actually was there when it happened. Unfortunately, I didn't get to visit it. So this is the launch of the Nike Lunar. Lunar is the shape of 8, right? And also infinite. So I am putting this example here. I don't think too many brands can pull this off. Nike wanted to tell a story of how, uh, the running is an act of becoming better than yourself. You're not running against anyone except yourself. So what they did was, this entire track is actually made of, if I remember correctly, the Lunar shoe is fitted with a chip that records your run experience and from the last time. And there is on the screen, if I remember correctly, there is a next slide. Yes. So you run against yourself. So the shoe has a tracker, and what Grace did last time and what Grace is doing this time, and how she can be better, how Grace is actually better with Luna. So you are actually you're running, and on screen, the Grace that can be faster, she's cheering you on. And it's a beautiful experience because Grace actually has forgotten about Claire or Michael or whoever. She doesn't care anymore because she is just in her own game, and she's saying, you know what? It doesn't matter. I am running against myself, for myself, and only to better myself. They only had one thing to say. The proposition that they wanted to land was that the Luna helps you get better. The Luna helps you be a better runner compared to yourself. You're in no race. So it was a beautiful activation, a Phygital activation that they did in Manila in 2018. And that's all that that city spoke about for the next 8 days. So it was 8 days activation. Some of the countries, some of the Philippines' biggest athletes came there. And it was an aerial shot. The shot that I showed you was actually an aerial shot taken, and lots of runners came there just to run. And why was it digital? Because that entire track was digitally maneuvered, and the chip was obviously digital in nature. It can't be anything else. And then all of the scores were constantly. So Grace's laps that you see on the screen was, let's say, from the previous day, and today's laps would get updated tomorrow, and people were just obsessed. And you couldn't get in. Like, even if I wanted to get in, I just couldn't, because there were just so many thousands of people wanting to run. So I again can't go too much into it, because this is just, Nike is a case study on how to create pop culture conversation and fandom by just taking one beautiful insight. And I will answer this insight for you, but if we were in an interactive room, I'd ask you what that human insight is. The beautiful human insight here is, we are forever in a rat race amongst others. But here's this one brand coming to tell you, forget all that. What if you just ran against yourself? What if you just ran in a race to better yourself? What if I told you you could forget everyone and you were only running for you, not even against yourself? And that's the beautiful story. This is also a story, guys. This track is the most beautiful story I have seen. So stories, so many times when let's say in an interview, I'm like asked, so is an AV only a story, or like a article only a story? I'm like, no, like Nike's Lunar track is a story. The event that you do is a story. The booth that you set up outside the event is a story. A story exists in multifarious formats. A LinkedIn post is a story. An Instagram post is a story. An Instagram story is a story. A story takes multiple formats. Remember that. Okay, talking about channels, again, a very, very, very complicated area. I think a lot of you will probably spend a lot of time, I do, thinking about it. So I wanted to share what my media agency shared with us recently. So I wanted to share this with you. On the right, no easy way to answer this question, which channels should I invest? Like, I get asked very bluntly on my face saying, what should I invest more in? I'm like, have you answered the 4 questions? And usually the answer is no. So I'm like, then I can't, like, you shouldn't be asking this question before you have answered the 4 questions. So I'm assuming that you spend a lot of time understanding your audience. So the new audience, remember that your audience, the dust hasn't settled. So your audience is behaving very differently. 2019, there were one beast, and now they're another beast. So the audience based on age, gender, education, relationship status, acha chalo, let's assume that hasn't really changed. Maybe the economic status has changed a little bit. Maybe jobs have changed. Maybe they have moved cities. That also is a big thing to remember. Socioeconomic indicators, have their device type changed? Maybe the laptop usage has really gone up. Maybe the internet speeds have really gone up. So that's something you need to keep in mind. Intent, segment people based on their offline and online interactions with brands as well as interests. Only one thing I will tell you here. Remember the 40 million number I threw at you? So it's important to remember that their intent to use the internet has drastically changed, my friends, since 2019 to here. Behavior. Wow. यहाँ पे तो मतलब आपको thesis करना पड़ेगा. Like, you have to select people based on their prior purchase behavior, device usage, and activities. Very simple. If I were you, I would spend a majority of my time understanding channel behavior when it came to intent and how are they behaving online on channels, right? So therefore, I bring you back. If you're asking yourself this question, saying I'm a little lost, so I'm not in a position to answer this individually. I'll tell you this upfront because I answer this for myself and my team every other day. Once you've understood how your buyer decision process, that 5-stage awareness consideration, has evolved, or interestingly is evolving, you will need to adapt your media and channel mix to reflect that shift. Now, I understand it's no easy process. Like I said, one fine day, wake up, beautiful video, matlab, happy, super happy. Editor and I are just waiting कि कहाँ से वो मतलब 500,000 hit होगा, and I can finally take a break and have a cup of tea. 26,000. What the hell happened? Instagram has changed its algo. Okay. Suddenly one fine day in March, statics are doing beautifully. Photos are doing beautifully. Instagram has decided that they will go back to being a photo sharing platform. Consumer behavior though has not changed. Platform behavior has changed. Good. Then you have to now observe platform behavior also. So that's why, what was my first slide? Never a better or worse time to be part of marketing. So remember that also, right? You will need to have different channels and different activities or content on those channels to target users at different stages of the CPP. So everything rests on your CPP. So there is no blanket answer. And if any consultant, any marketing person tells you that there is a blanket person, like when TikTok was around, they used to come and tell me, just invest in TikTok. And I'd just sit and say, okay, so what part of my journey is TikTok helping? I love TikTok, guys. Like, I was the biggest proponent of TikTok. I must tell you that before TikTok became TikTok, if none of you have heard of Dub Smash and Musically, me and my friends in Singapore used to have used Dub Smash and Musically before any of you even heard of it. So I was the biggest proponent of TikTok, and I tried using TikTok for many of my campaigns. But I am not that marketer who will be told, TikTok naya hai, TikTok use karo. And I'm like, But for what? Tell me, but for what? Which part of my consumer journey? Which part of my consumer journey, what objective, and to what end? Then you have no answer then. So therefore, no one answer to which channel should I invest in, more or less of, in 2021. So hence a trick question. Marketers will prioritize media channels that shorten the purchase funnel and reduce the number of steps a consumer must take from ad exposure to final conversion. Why am I saying this? Please understand the 40 million number. I did not throw it out without a thought. We are all e-commerce consumers. I'm 100% putting it out there that everyone here makes at least 1 or 2 e-commerce transactions a day. Do you not hate it when you are on an e-commerce site and they make you take more than 3 steps? If that is the case, then this pro tip works for you. You have to shorten the journey on an e-commerce site. So if that's the case, then your overall journey to finding a brand, to researching a brand, to finding a brand cannot be too long drawn out, right? So you have to keep that in mind when you're deciding मैं कौन से channels पे. So when I am reclining and I'm just like, okay, now I want to like understand, like, okay, I'm researching for that cream. Where should I go to research for that cream? What's the insight about that cream? Okay, Instagram is one of the best channels because all the beauty influencers are there. Okay, that's a great place to put your beauty product. The how of it, now you have to figure, right? But the insight that your consumer is on Instagram to look for beauty, is that there? Absolutely, it's there, right? So that's why I said there's no easy answer, but I'm going to leave you with some, again, the lovely data. So in the last year alone, we saw 40 million people come online, doubling the annual average of the last 5 years. So that's why, friends, the easiest and the toughest time to be in marketing. If anyone wants to make a decision and go into anything else, there's still time. This enormous growth means that 70% of the region, when I say region, this means the APAC region, population now uses the internet. So our regions, the internet demography has fully changed, which is why I called it seismic shifts, right? In fact, 1 in 3 digital consumers tried a new service during this time, with the highest growth coming from education, grocery, loans, and online videos, which is why I intentionally used online videos as the search word. As people start to put more trust in digital tools, trust being a very key factor, we expect to see these trends continue across Southeast Asia specifically, which, by the way, does not include India. 90% of new users stated that they will continue using digital services post-COVID-19. I can safely say that if the numbers are not 90%, they'll at least be 60-70% in India. As a result, by 2025, it is estimated that online gross merchandise value will exceed 300 billion. This is not me. This is Think with Google. It's a free report. Please feel free to read it. It's one of the most beautiful resources. This report is called 2020 in Review. It's top insights from across APAC. All right, so here's just one slide that I wanted to leave you on before I go on to the last hack, if you will, for building an integrated plan. Really one that brings it all home together. Been in the business for a video for so long, can't not talk about it. So one thing that I'd really like you to consider is, this is from a resource called WARC, W-A-R-C, Marketeers Toolkit 2021. It's not free, so you'll have to pay for it. Marketeers are overwhelmingly upping investment in online video. I don't think I need to explain this to you. I rue the day anyone asks me again, are people still watching online video? I mean, I have friends who work in ByteDance across the world, and I am in awe of what that company is achieving. Someone asked me the other day, how would you define ByteDance? I said they defy any definition. Like, are they a gaming company? Are they a music company? You know, to call them a short form video company is an insult. And whatever they have become in the last 1 year in the middle of a damn pandemic. So they are unbelievable as a company, right? So now let's think about, why is online video going through the roof? One is obviously necessitated by the fact that we are in a lockdown. People have no entertainment. This has become a means of education, entertainment, interaction, what have you, fitness, for example, right? And also the fact that 5G mobile network rollout has happened across the region. Indonesia is one of the countries that's leading the charge. Another surprise country is actually Vietnam, followed by yours truly, India. And therefore, it's expected that the video consumption globally, and especially in the region, will be reinforced. This is a global data that worked throughout, which was not a surprise at all to me, that influencer marketing in 2021, nearly 3/4 of advertisers are going to allocate budget to influencer marketing, and it will become more central to brand building on social platforms. My request to anyone doing influencer marketing, especially given that ASCI guidelines in India now necessitate that you say ad or paid partnership, is to let influencers talk in their own tone of voice and not make it look like an ad, because then you are doing a disservice to the influencer and to your own brand. Again, that in itself is a whole session on how to do influencer marketing. But I do think that if done well, it's one of the best things that you could do. And one thing to do is to understand that they have built their following basis and art and expertise that they have built. So let's not pretend we know their craft better than they do. So some of the most successful campaigns I have run with influencers is when I've given them a brief, And I've said, now you take this brief and you tell that story in your own craft, in your own tone of voice. I'm just coming in to ensure accuracy of my messaging. And that's it. You do your thing. You sing that song in your own tone of voice, right? And the last thing to remember is nascent channels, guys. Gaming and podcasts. It's hilarious to call gaming nascent, but in this part of the world, it is. Keep an eye out for gaming, keep an eye out for podcasts. If you get on early on those two trains as marketing engines, you could make a killing. And they are really, gaming is becoming insane. Like in Southeast Asia, Riot Games just started hiring in India. So I not write off gaming and podcasts. These are just slightly more futuristic, and I put them here because we're talking about the future. We're talking about dust settling. Gaming has had insane growth, both from the consumer end as well as advertisement revenue. Like I remember last year, several industries like ourselves and unlike ourselves really investing in gaming from an advertisement point of view. So you can imagine their double-digit growth, right? So because people are spending time playing games. So think about that as well as potential channels that you choose from. All right, here's my favorite subject after having spoken about all of that: how to tell one story across multiple platforms. So really simple, really, really, really simple. Shocking, I know how simple it is, but isn't the most simple thing the toughest to do, which is make it human. So we'll talk about brand personality, we will talk about connecting versus promoting, and we'll talk about how social is culture coming live. All right. So the job of a really great storyteller is to ensure that you tell one story across multiple platforms, right? So how do you do that? You have to ensure that you find a way to let the brand personality come through. So I often ask myself, and it's a bit schizophrenic, so stay with me. If your brand were to be a person, who would he or she be? So I have had the good fortune of working with some brands that have a very well defined personality. I've also had the good fortune of working with brands that had no personality, but I have had a hand in shaping their personality. So that's super exciting, right? You get into a room and you give that brand a personality. You actually look across your colleagues and you say, if that brand were to be an animal, what would they be? And then one of them says, stealthy, strong, and the other looks at this and could be a cheetah. And then you say, hang on a second. So you write cheetah on the post-it. And slowly but surely, can you imagine, like that brand doesn't exist. You know it's a product, but you're giving it shape, like an artist. So that's when a marketer becomes an artist, right? So you'll have to imagine, if your brand were to be a person, who would he or she be? But also remember that brand or that person has to be colorful, has to be multifaceted enough to be, if that person were to enter a room or a party, would you like to talk to them? Now imagine if they had only one facet. If they entered a party, like, why would you be bothered? So therefore, the next question is, what would they be? What would their multiple attributes be? Like, what would their multiple facets be? So how well can you describe him or her? So why am I saying all this? See, this is, like I said, this is brand building 101. We spend years doing it. What I talk to you about is a typical brand architecting exercise that I'm sure the brand practitioners on this call know very well about. We work with brand agencies that help us do this. We get into really intense exercises with them across months. It sometimes is very frustrating because you feel you have hit it and then you hit a snag and then you're like, hang on a second, but this doesn't work. So you go back to the drawing board, right? But my assumption here is that you have already decided that your brand has a personality. And in that story, my pro tip to you is that ensure that your unique tone of voice comes through. I'll tell you why. To have an authentic, unique tone of voice in today's day and age is extremely, extremely important, because your consumers who have spent a year and a half, in some cases 2 years, holed up at home and have been bombarded with all sorts of let me take advantage of you ads, can spot a fake ad, a fake creative intervention from a distance. So there is no better time to be authentic than now, my friends. So have a unique brand tone of voice and make it count. right? So that's point number one. Connect versus promote. So 2020 brought home the need to humanize brand offerings. In 2021, people will be looking for authentic connections. Highlight the brand purpose boldly. So I'm going to give you an example which is not in India, but I'm sure everyone's familiar with it. Um, AIA Insurance in Singapore, a very big global company, they were the first in the heights of the pandemic in June 2020 last year. They were actually the first to actually offer uh, COVID linked insurance. And it went wild because they basically said, what are people going to do if they get COVID? And that was the height of getting COVID, right? And they said, we're going to give you COVID linked insurance. Don't worry, we got your back. And that's beautiful because they connected with the audience instead of promoting. So again, people can see through a real connection versus I am just going to jump on this bandwagon because everyone's wo jo behti ganga mein haath dhona. Let's not do that. Let's find a genuine connection versus something that I want to promote because everyone's sort of promoting. So if you have a brand purpose, this is the time to highlight that brand purpose boldly. And again, I'll bring back Nike's example. Uh, or actually, I'll take Dove's example in a while. Nike's example is that Nike started with or not started really. Over time, it became clear that the brand's purpose was to make everyone realize that they could be an athlete. The thing here is that if they're saying that everybody could be an athlete, then that's the purpose that needs to get reinforced in everything. So the athletes are all athletes. But if you and I or a boy in a small town could be an athlete, how do you show it time and time again? How do you find new expressions of it? If you found the same expressions of it, then that would be really boring, right? So over time, they had to find new expressions of it. So for that, a very strongly defined brand purpose is very important. So I leave you to find how Dove has done that. Dove has done that very well as well. So they have one brand purpose, which is to say that everyone's beautiful, every woman is beautiful, and there is no one defined way of. I mean, Dove was the first brand to do it, right? Now everyone does it and comes across as fake. You just have to see how beautifully they have continued to do it and how beautifully they have sort of stayed relevant on this. Social is equal to culture live. I love the topic of culture and I love talking about it till the cows come home. Culture is that pulse point, guys. It's humanity's currency, right? It's what we live on. It's that connective tissue that ties us all together. It's what we talk about. It's our films, it's our literature, it's our weddings, it's our fashion, it's all of that, right? So you have to ask yourself, right? What's your brand's entry point, or what's your brand's right to participate in pop culture? Can your brand participate in live culture, or what is now being called moment marketing? So, for example, when that Baspan Ka Pyar happened, do you have the right to participate in it? Sometimes I feel it's better not to participate than to participate and be made fun of. If you're a brand that doesn't have a point of view on that live pulsating culture, stay out of it because you're going to get made fun of. If you have a really great point of view, you should. I'll show you an example in the next slide of a brand that did a really good thing by participating in it. But it's become like, especially in India, I see it's become a really, let's participate, because if we don't participate, oh, then how will social samosa not feature us? Like, all due respect, a feature in social samosa is really great, but please also look at what's doing to your brand, what it's doing to your brand, right? So moment marketing is really great. Don't do it because you want to get featured in a blog. Do it because of what it will do to your brand in the long term. What will consumers think of you? So what did I say? Culture is this live pulsating thing, right? It's our films, it's our literature, it's our movies, it's what we talk about, it's what gets spoken about in living rooms, it's what gets celebrated on social media. Does your brand have an entry point? If it doesn't, it's fine. Think about whether you can create it or not. Develop it over time. Does not happen overnight. Takes years, decades for a brand to become iconic. All right, so here's an example of moment marketing done right. If you remember, this was I think the day of the president swearing in, and when this happened, and IKEA did this with their folding chair, and this look became so famous, and this ad went viral. All they did was this folding chair and this oven gloves available, but it just became like a super hilarious thing. I think we may have run out of time to play this ad, but there's a beautiful ad that was done by the Girl Up Foundation. Ogilvy did this with volunteer sort of. Asha, do we have time to play this ad?
Yeah, just go ahead. I think you can. Go ahead, Deepashri, you can play the ad.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear.
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
That I will well and faithfully discharge.
That I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
The duties of the office upon which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
So, if I'm not mistaken, this was basically done by Ogilvy for Kamala Harris's swearing in, and this was quite literally done overnight and released for the Girl Up Foundation as a voluntary thing, where you can say this is cause movement marketing, where girls around the world watched, someone like them, a possibility of them becoming someone like her, being represented on such a big world stage, and they wanted to make a point about how that's possible, and they did it, and it was just volunteer photographers across the world, and it was a beautiful, beautiful moment. So you can read more about it. So a good story is central to any creative, right, guys? I cannot. I spend sleepless nights thinking about whether a good story has been told. A good story, you will know it in your gut. It's scientific, sure, but at the end of the day, we've all been told stories, right? As children, we've all been told stories. So when you see a good story, and if it leaves you with a smile, you know it's a good story. If it makes you want to send it to someone, you know it's a good story. If it makes you want to hit that heart, you know it's a good story. If it makes you want to comment, good or bad, you know it's a good story because it hits a nerve. If it makes you want to hit that save, you know it's a good story. So therefore, remember that good brands, they do one thing. They share more of what consumers want to hear. That's what I tell my team. 1 year to the ground always, versus say more of what consumers want to hear versus what your brand want to say. And I'm going to use a very fun analogy to round up this session, right? Which is to say that imagine a party where you enter and there's this one person who endlessly talks about themselves. And then in comes this person who talks a little bit about themselves, but wants to hear more about you. Hey, tell me about yourself. Tell me about that tattoo you got. Tell me a little bit more about you. But then in the process shares about themselves as well. So therefore, the pro tip that I want to end with is that listen more than you share. That's what some of the best brands in the world do. That's why I said it's not about the data. It's about the insights that the data gives that you then build into the stories that you tell. But the good story or a bad story, you will feel it in your gut. Yeah, so here are the 4 key codes again. Remember, your consumer purchase pathways have changed thanks to the 40 million people or more worldwide that have entered the internet and have embraced it on their own, as their own. Think about how you can build in Phygital experiences in either one or all of these 5 or 6 points of purchase in the pathway. Think about how you're going to make channel choices in 2021, given how much your purchase pathways have changed. And there are codes of making one story and making it good across multiple platforms. One of the key codes I live by is to listen more and listen to really give the consumer's point of view in the story. Really think about where does culture meet what the consumer wants to hear. And really, when I see a story presented to me, I ask myself in the gut, saying, do I like the story? Do I not like the story? And if I don't like the story, I say, hey guys, we got to take it back to the edit table, right? And here's my favorite quote of all times. I either begin or end all presentations with it. Seth Godin is my man. He said, marketing is no longer about the stuff you make, but about the stories you tell. Imagine for a man like Seth to say this in such a data-driven age, he must be right. So on that note, thank you guys. I think we can take the questions now.